While the rest of the internet was busy hating Star Wars episode, which one is it?
You realize I need to go in like 10 minutes, but I was gonna say
this only needs to last 10 minutes so I can put multiple ads on it, McDoogleh.
I gotcha, buddy.
Yeah, that's more like it. So while the rest of the internet was busy hating Star Wars episode...
Hating.
There you go. It was 8. We were busy discussing...
Hate on 8. Hashtag hate on 8.
God damn it! We were busy discussing everything we liked and hated about the movie. This is my good friend... Jonathan McDoogleh. You can find him on Twitter. He develops games for various games companies.
Sure, we'll go with that. Sure. Hi. I mean, that's not... Okay. I mean, I just want to clarify one thing. You only follow me on Twitter if you're interested in cats or occasionally gaming stuff. But it's mostly the cats.
Oh, I've seen the cats you've been talking to.
That's pretty much what my Twitter's about.
Daisy Ridley was certainly very feline-esque in her performance as Rey.
All right, why don't we move forward? So, what do you think of 8?
Honestly, dude, okay, bro, I saw it like sneak preview Thursday night, and I came out of it. I'm like, I don't know if I like this or if I hate it. I'm in the middle of the road. I keep thinking, and the more I think about it, I think the more I hate it.
Okay, that's interesting.
But I mean, there's parts I love too.
No, that's okay. That's okay. It's okay. Like I'm not. So here's the funny thing.
I'm so conflicted.
I came out of it.
Yeah.
And the more I thought about it, the more I liked it.
The more you liked it?
Yeah. It's shocking.
We're going to war on this one. I like it.
I mean, you know, I can totally see the perspective of like why someone would dislike this film. I mean, it is. I definitely have a feeling it's going to be polarizing.
Yeah.
I think on part, a lot of people saying it's better than Empire. I mean, that is just a mistake because, as in from the standpoint of you're giving this film hype.
Yeah.
Like. You're building up the hype.
It has 93% approval rating.
I mean, by saying it's better than Empire, like out of the gate, or quoting that, you are basically setting up every fan's expectation.
The critics were paid.
Well, no, we're going to disagree on that. Because
did you see the fan rating? I don't like Rotten Tomatoes, but it went down to like 56% today.
I actively try to avoid setting my expectations on that. I mean, like, you go see something like Batman v Superman, and again, like, you have this completely skew from critics and audience.
Almost exactly the opposite.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Reaction. But I mean, I think the main... Here's my thing with Last Jedi. I think, honestly, it's definitely a second watch. But if you go and
100%,
I'll put it this way: for what it did for me,
we're gonna spoil it by the way, so you can go ahead.
Okay, all right. If The Force Awakens was about looking back, like going back to go forward,
right?
This film was all about going forward, and that is the through line throughout the whole film. Is the idea? I mean, if J.J. Abrams kind of brushed the territory of nothing is sacred. Right. Rian Johnson's kind of like nothing is sacred at all. And I think there are definitely a couple of sequences in the film which highlight this point.
With the tree, I get that, yeah.
Yeah, the
Yoda
tree
burns down the tree.
The books. But as well as...
The books were on the Falcon at the end, by the way.
Yes, I know, but I'll get to why they're on the Falcon anyways. I think... The main thing is it's about moving forward and kind of reframing what you think Star Wars is. Because if you look at everything they do in the film, they either something goes wrong and kind of subverts what you would expect a Star Wars film to obey.
Right.
Or or like they take certain things and completely throw it away. Best example of
literally thrown it into the ocean.
Spoiler alert. First thing Luke
Yes.
does, doesn't say anything. Luke doesn't say anything when you first see him. Spoiler alert. He tosses away the lightsaber. And I mean, I think to every Star Wars fan, that is like a, what? Why would he do that? And
Yeah,
why,
it was.
Like, I mean, not only is his dad's lightsaber, but it's like one of the most like iconic artifacts throughout the whole Star Wars saga.
It's at the bottom.
He tosses it off the cliff.
Cloud City.
And well, there's that in Cloud City, but then he like does the same thing. He throws it away, and
he clearly does not like this lightsaber.
Well, I mean, the whole situation, like he doesn't like it, and then you come to learn. I mean, the whole film is about moving forward.
Yeah.
And kind of throwing away what you know about Star Wars. Like, stop thinking the Jedi is this. Stop thinking the dark side is this. Stop thinking the First Order. Stop thinking for Empire. Stop thinking all of those things. Like, stop dragging all of that weight into when you're going in to see it. Because, I mean, another good example is what Luke does later on in the third act.
Right.
Is, you know, the fan in me wanted him to be doing certain things like, you know, bringing down the walkers with one hand and all that, but he doesn't do any of that.
He's a hologram, basically, in the
Or as a
third
projection.
act. Yeah.
But then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that is actually ultimately more powerful than if he was actually physically destroying the walkers, because not only what he was able to do there was do something and completely bend the reality of that entire engagement. And because of that, it became a legend, as in that this guy, you know, with a lightsaber just appeared, and, you know, all the bolts were hitting him, and it
like
did nothing
that,
to him.
he was
and then
gone.
Kylo Ren went to face him one-on-one, couldn't kill him, and then he just vanishes. And I mean, to me, that is so much more powerful than if Luke was physically there doing something. And I mean, that was just something like I've been thinking about, but I can completely get why people wouldn't like it. I mean, you know, and I mean, like, I unfortunately think Finn, like, I can't deny the fact that Finn definitely got the short end of the character arc there. And I mean, like, Rey and Poe, like, when you complete the film, Rey and Poe's arcs work. Like, they really did work for me. As in, Rey learned by the end of the film that there's no straight path. There is only, like, you can only shape the path. You can only shape yourself going forward.
Right. And I think even Kylo Ren had that in him too, where
absolutely.
He said,
and in fact, Kylo
burn the past or whatever, and destroy it all.
You completely respect Kylo, I think, more as a character coming out of this film. Like, you know, he's such a, like, you, I mean, I liked him in 7. Like,
I liked him in 7 a lot, yeah.
He was what Anakin was supposed to be.
I kept joking, by the way. I kept joking to my friend. I'm like, I hope in 8, or 9 or whatever, I hope Rey just, you know, force activates his crossblade lightsaber while it's on his belt and it cuts his dick. And he did that to Snoke, so I mean, that's
I know he did that to
that's
Snoke.
a payoff on my end that I think was enjoyable. But
again, there we go. Like, again, like, I can see why a lot of people are upset about Snoke, as in, like, you know. But I think at the same time, there are two things going on there.
Mm-hmm.
I think one, it just goes to show that nothing has to be sacred in Star Wars. Like, not everyone has to be something. Not everyone has to be related to something else. Not every, you know, if you look, I mean, if you put yourself in the mindset of the original Star Wars,
right,
like when it just came out,
the first
there
one,
wasn't like Skywalker saga and all that. Like, you watch that film, it's a farm boy. Like, he's a nobody.
Yeah.
But it is his progression through the film that he does become somebody. And
well, he has some ties too, because Obi-Wan says Darth Vader killed your father. Anakin. He didn't say they're two different people.
Yeah, sure. But it wasn't like Obi-Wan took Anakin Skywalker, who was this chosen one. It was Anakin Skywalker was just a pupil of his.
Oh, yeah, originally they were two different characters.
Yeah, they made it out as two different characters. That Darth Vader killed his father, and, like, you know, that's kind of one part, the impetus of why Luke goes to fight for the rebellion. But at the same time, you've also got the fact that, you know, his family gets killed, but fundamentally, you look at where Luke is. He's alive
by Boba Fett.
Luke is a nobody.
He's not a nobody. He is the descendant of Space Jesus, Dark Side Edition.
Okay, well, if you want to take that extension, Anakin was a nobody as well. He was a. I mean, oh god.
The only nobody right now is Rey and that piece of shit kid they had at the end of the movie with the little rebel decoder ring.
Listen, man, they didn't have the kid speak.
I'm glad they didn't.
I'm good.
That was giving me prequel flashbacks.
Like, yeah, I think anyone who has prequel trauma was a bit like.
It's like, what the, fuck is going on?
Just a side note that if you like the prequels, that's okay too.
Yeah, it's cool too.
What frustrates me about the prequels is the actual story wasn't bad. It was just extremely poor execution.
Well, here's the thing. You can like the prequels, but I get it too, because the prequels are more like Star Wars than this movie was.
Okay, well, you know, we're here to talk about 8. I don't even want to get
bombs today, McDoogleh.
We're not gonna get into that. All I would say is the prequels, you know, they have their place, and
they had their place. They told a story. Stuff happened.
They have a story, and I think that story could have been told better. That's my only thing with the prequels. I think it is not the story; it's the execution that frustrates me more. Anyways, setting that aside, with 8, returning back to 8, I think this whole film is all about bringing all of that down, as in terms of expectations that somebody has to relate to something. I mean, like, who is responsible for thinking that Snoke is someone?
J.J. Abrams.
Us. Did he though?
Yeah. Like, Snoke gets... Okay, I get you're saying Snoke gets built up by the audience as this mysterious character, and every fucking YouTuber made a fan theory on it, right? Same with
Rey as well.
Yeah, and Rey too. But in the opening crawl, they mentioned Supreme Leader Snoke of TFA. We see Kylo Ren doing badass shit, and he's scared of Snoke, so that creates this more ominous presence. He's giving orders down to people. The third thing we also see, Leia and Han talk about this Snoke character turning their son to the dark side. So there's this huge buildup in the movie to Snoke being someone important. And he isn't ultimately, like, there's that backstory is never going to get answered.
Okay,
it's just a fucking mystery.
He is important. He is important in the sense.
Not anymore.
Oh yeah, not anymore. But important in the sense of he served his function, and the function was, listen, Snoke. Like, we don't really understand the Force, and that's the other thing that this movie does, as in. You know, when he's talking about seeing visions, like, we don't actually know what he's seeing. And I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah, it's not literal. Like, I mean, in the prequels, I think they explored the idea of vision. Like, they had literal vision, so we could actually see what he could see.
But how can Rey's parents be nobody when all the people with midichlorians were killed off by Vader?
Well, they weren't. And
you think about that, McDoogleh!
Well, I mean, I don't know. It depends. It is a certain point of view. It's a certain point of view of the Force could be.
This movie felt
down to your midichlorians cloud.
To me like a Marvel movie. Did you get that vibe with all the jokes? Yeah. I thought every quip felt Marvel-y to me. Like when Poe's like, "Hey, this is your." I laughed because I like the Marvel movies too.
I think Poe was consistent, and I think Rey was consistent with their characters.
Seeing Hux being thrown around by a hologram.
I mean, that was amazing. But
it was amazing, but it was like straight out of Marvel.
No,
It didn't
that
fe-
is a very...
In Star Wars, he would have been choked for his incompetence.
Well, no, but again, that's a case of expectations. Like,
The First
you're
Order were a
thinking,
joke.
you're thinking, your expectation is, well, you know, and Palpatine would have choked someone, or lightning someone. Darth Vader would have choked someone. But
you saw the
those
fear
were
in
those
their
characters.
eyes. Yeah.
Those were those characters, whereas
These are shiny new characters.
these are different characters, and what I would say is
Snoke's toys didn't sell enough, so they canned his character.
No, I think Snoke ultimately served the function of really fleshing out our bad guy and putting him in a position, like, I mean, he killed Han, and ultimately that sets him up as, oh man, he's a terrible person, but then the moment he kills Snoke, it really throws you off, because and I mean, like, obviously,
I was hyped when it happened.
With hindsight, it's pretty obvious he was going to kill Snoke, judging by the fact that he didn't pull the trigger on Leia.
Yeah.
But I think what it builds into is this really interesting character who will ultimately make their own choices. And if you look at the way he killed Snoke, it was so in character, like he knew he couldn't kill Snoke. But the opportunity came where he knew Snoke's power was focused on Rey.
Right. That he caught him off guard.
He caught him off guard. And then, I think to some extent as well, with him as a character, he kind of represents as, you gotta burn all that stuff down and like, gotta start fresh. Whereas, you know, with
I'd be
Rey...
cool if the start fresh stuff was more so in Rian Johnson's own trilogy, as opposed to, like, I felt like part of it was crowbarred in on this one to make way for his grand whatever when it comes out in 2020.
Well, okay, this is the funny thing. Yeah. So I've gone through, make fun of me if you want, but I went through the art of The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
And what is incredible about it is, from start to finish, I think this was literally the story he wanted to tell. Whereas if you look at, say, something like The Force Awakens,
right,
and you look at how that came about, it is crazy. Like, I mean, some of the storylines they are coming up with, the ideas were so, and I mean, like, yeah, that might be in service of the fact that Rian Johnson is telling a second part, so the first part's already been established. But I mean, there are certain storylines that they came up with, like in pre-production of Force Awakens, like they could have easily have picked up in The Last Jedi, and appropriately, actually.
There were so many and they all disappeared in this movie.
Yeah, that's exactly it. This entire film was very unpredictable and grounded. I mean, like, someone pointed out that the entire situation with the Resistance felt like Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, it did.
Season 1. There's an episode called 33, which is the first episode.
First episode, yeah. Every 33 minutes.
And then I was thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense.
And then you think about stuff like, why didn't some of the Star Destroyers do some Star Destroying and, like, warp ahead and then box them in like they did?
Box them in, but I mean,
they did that in the last movie, Rogue One. Vader came in and boxed in all the rebels and just went to town. And I don't know. I like the themes, like you're saying, but some of the elements I don't like were just really dragging the film for me.
No, sure. And I mean, like, there's no, I mean, from my perspective, like, Finn's character, like, that was, it's like, I
Casino
get why
planet,
like, I mean, so for me, that type of planet is super interesting because I love the Jedi Knight games, and one of my favorite settings from those games
casinos.
is Nar Shaddaa, which has a casino setting as well. Or like KOTOR as well has one of the, you know, like one of those microtransactions, seedy underbelly pachinko machines.
Yes, you know me too well.
Didn't you win your YouTube channel in a gambling thing?
There was a poker game. We're not supposed to talk about it.
Anyways, setting
NDA.
That aside. NDA. So setting that aside.
Please set it aside quicker.
Yeah, I'm working on it, man. Bottom line is this film had a theme. It was all about moving forward, letting go of the past, letting go of what we think we know, letting go of what our preconceived notions are of what this should be.
That space
And
witch was
kind of-
fucking terrifying.
And kind of move forward.
Biggest joke in Star Wars. She gets shot and the window decompresses. Admiral Akbar dies very
Off the
unceremoniously. I imagine cooked lobster, human size, would be delicious. Anyway, Carrie Fisher's dead body flying in space, and she sticks out her hand and pulls herself towards the ship and flies like Mary Poppins. It was ridiculous. Like that shouldn't have happened. I would have been cool if she died there, quite honestly.
I thought that as well. I thought that was the way they were going to handle it.
Or if it was filmed differently. If it was filmed
no,
differently.
none of it has been. Like this is the really crazy thing. Like you look through that book and you realize, he pretty much got to make the film he wanted to make, and it's not so much that wasn't the case with JJ.
Yeah,
but with JJ had a very specific intent with his film. It was move back to get us forward again.
JJ set up the universe to go in a certain way. Rian Johnson went the complete. JJ set him up for a home run, and Rian Johnson was like, I'm not even going to play this game. And
I think Rian Johnson, what he ultimately did was he nuked everything we knew that as in what we would expect from a Star Wars film.
Everything the fans like, he was like, I don't think you guys deserve it.
But no,
you guys can have my story.
It was all about let's bring things back to basics. Not everyone has to be somebody. Not every situation's going to work out. Not everything has to follow a form. Not everything has to be linked. None of this has to be connected. Like
I know,
you can
have
these.
So
you can have these.
good.
By the way, I totally think that Kylo's playing with Rey, and I suspect her parents.
See, I
mean, he gives such a throwaway answer that I'm like,
they're junkers.
It's like they're junkers, and like ultimately, if she turns out to be just Rey, I mean, I'll be good for that as well. But at the same time, just the way they play with things and dialogues and her sequence with Snoke, it all kind of hints at a little bit more, I think, as far as her character is concerned.
You're telling me that in the 5 hours since she left to go visit Luke, that she left from the Force Awakens at the end to go see Luke, that the First Order made hyperspace tracking technology. Give me a break, Rian Johnson! You make one great episode of TV doesn't mean you need to ruin Star Wars for everybody. It just came back.
I think the thing is, though, is like, I mean, they built a giant sun sucker that could blow up an entire star system. So, I mean, like, if they can do that, why can't they track ships through hyperspace? Also, they did hint at that because in The Force Awakens, the way they find Acto... Oh, no, sorry, not Acto, but wherever the Resistance base... Dakar, I think. They track the X-Wing through hyperspace. So, they're like, I mean, there are certain things in Force Awakens that do actually set up the fact that the First Order, do have their stuff together. I mean, it is a little bit unusual. I mean, not a little bit unusual, but it is unusual, the fact that, like, it's weird that doesn't, like, they've brought it to Rebellion and First Order, because really, like...
The First Order are the rebels, essentially.
Well, I don't know. Like, I mean, they're like, I don't know why it's Rebellion, because, I mean, you know, they took out their leader and they took out, like, the biggest ship they had in their fleet. Right. It, like, I don't know, it's put Star Wars, to me, it's put it in an interesting place where neither side really has one-upmanship over the other. Both sides seem like they're on a fresh, even plane or even footing. Like, I mean, I suspect the First Order losing their leader, I mean, Kylo Ren was completely unhinged in the third act, and
right. He wasn't intimidating though. That's the problem in this one.
Sorry,
he wasn't intimidating.
I disagree.
Unhinged.
I think
okay, when he cut through Luke, yeah.
I mean, to me, intimidating or not, I think he makes for a very compelling character, and I'm definitely curious how things will move forward. And I think the way that they've set it up is like the First Order is kind of going to disarray, the galaxy's going to go into disarray, and it's going to set up the situation where it's just like, can you really have a power struggle when there's no like leading side, you know? And
right.
Ultimately, I mean, one, with that ending, I have no clue how JJ closes this.
He has a mess to clean up, like he does.
Yeah,
Ryan Johnson gave him so much of a mess to clean up.
He has his work cut out for him, but I think ultimately...
He wanted Luke for the rest of it.
I suspect, if anything, I think JJ will probably bring things to a nice close in 9. Judging by the fact that a lot of people... Well, I don't know. It seems like it's very polarizing. I've seen people who like The Force Awakens not like this film. I've seen people who didn't like The Force Awakens who do like this film, and then anything in between. Mm-hmm. So for me, I like both films for what they mean. And actually, after rewatching this film, like I've completely thrown this idea of you have to rank them. I mean, to me, it seems like...
Oh, you want me to rank them, McDoogleh?
No, I don't. Because I know what your order is going to be.
You know what Order 66 is?
Yeah.
It's not that I hated it. It's just I'm very conflicted on how I feel about it, and when I think more about it, I hate it.
I think fundamentally the one thing I keep hearing is this film's high is as equal as its lows, and that is definitely one thing I think which leaves people conflicted.
Yeah,
and
because there's awesome stuff. The throne room scene is amazing.
You watch this film,
kamikaze scene's amazing,
and I can completely understand why you would hate it. For instance,
yeah.
And I mean, well, I think you can pretty much see why I would like it. But I mean, like at the end of the day, it's like I think that's the one thing with this film. It is very polarizing, and I mean, like, I know walking out of The Force Awakens, I knew how I felt about that film, and I was like pumped. I was like, oh yeah, it's Star Wars is back.
Mm-hmm.
You go into this film, you leave it, and the one thing I find with this film that it definitely does is it leaves you thinking, and it makes you think over everything that has happened. And I guess ultimately, like, where you'll probably end up is depending on whether you think of it in a positive or negative light, as in the sense of, like, you're thinking of it and you're like, I actually really didn't like it, or you think of it and go, I really liked it. For me, the more I thought about the film, the more it grew on me. I'm not going to call it flawless. I'm not going to call it, like, best film since Empire, but what I will say is, like, I enjoyed it, and I think for the overall theme that they're trying to carry out throughout the whole film, it actually does work. Mm-hmm. No question that Phasma, I think, when we're gonna look in hindsight, Phasma's the Boba Fett of this trilogy.
She's worse than Boba Fett.
She was Boba Fett.
Worse. My friend said the same thing. She's like, she just went into the Sarlacc pit.
Phasma's the Boba Fett of this trilogy.
She is ridiculous.
Phasma's the Boba Fett.
She did nothing.
Finn definitely got the short straw as far as
the story,
his arc goes. Rose, I liked the character, but again, it was because of the arc she was involved. Like, I get what they were trying to do, but
she was kind of annoying too.
I liked her, but the problem, I think, fundamentally, is you look at the whole circumstance around it, and I think one of the issues is the fact that you don't really get a sense of time. Yeah. Like, the problem is the ship is moving in space, and, like, exactly. I can only suspect that it was there for, like, days or something, but
They said around 18 hours of fuel they had at the outset, if I recall.
But there you go. That's the problem. Is like that. That's the problem. Is you have the setting and there's no transition. I mean, I get what they were going for.
Immediately after the first movie in this trilogy,
it's just like it takes place over like 2 days of only what I can suspect is 2 or 3 days or whatever it is. But it is so weird that, like, you know, they're able to go to that planet, get trapped, get out, and return, and that ship is still moving.
Yeah. Yeah, seriously.
And I mean, I think that, and yeah, that's completely like, I get it, as in like, I like that idea, and I like the idea of Poe kind of, you know, again with Poe, they took his character, kind of flipped him in a really interesting way, as in they took away his starship. So unfortunately, since he can't be reckless in a X-wing, he's going to be reckless with a blaster.
On the
command vessel. And that's another thing is, like, again, his character was completely consistent with the way he's been built. He started the film reckless. In the second act, he makes him very reckless and questionable decisions. And then, like, you know, towards the end of the film, you realize he's wised up and realized he's learned something.
He had some growth, yeah.
And I mean, Yoda kind of hits this on the nose in the film.
About failure.
Failure's the best teacher. And I think to some extent that is what some of these characters learn, like with Rey, and Poe in particular. And again, it's just such a shame, but Finn did definitely get the, you know, short straw as far as like the arcs go. And I mean, unfortunately, it's like his arc is in service of Poe's, rather than him getting his own arc.
And I think that was a major hindrance too with this film. Like, I think if you compare it to how Empire fits in that structure where it's the middle, like, I'd rather have some actual aspect of danger sort of affecting the characters into the next one, whereas, say, in Empire, Han gets frozen.
Well, I mean, like in Empire, Han and Leia's storyline are kind of together. Like, I mean, if we look at our 3 leads, they are together on an arc together.
Yeah.
And it works because their arcs were in service of each other. They're kind of together for that arc. I almost feel like if it was Finn and Poe who go on that journey together, maybe it could have worked.
Yeah, I don't. I personally don't get why Poe stayed behind.
Yeah, maybe if it was Poe and Finn together, that might have worked, and I think that would have definitely have helped. But I mean, like, Rey has a very clear arc. Poe has a very clear arc, and unfortunately, Finn didn't really have an arc,
and she didn't really even get trained.
No, I would argue she did. I think what this film goes to show, and I mean, again, it's like, again, in Empire, like, Luke didn't. I mean, yeah, Luke, you know, did a little bit of training with Yoda, but ultimately he abandoned it, though.
Yeah, he abandoned it.
But I mean, see, the thing is, again, we are carrying over the expectations of what Jedi training means.
Because these tropes and expectations were done so well the first time, and so beloved by everyone, they should sort of bleed over into this same vein of this trilogy.
But I don't think that's what it's about. I think...
Well, now it's not.
Well, yeah, no, it's definitely not. But I think one of the things is I mean, before going to this film, I pretty much figured out, like, in my head, I'm like, okay, this is what the Force is. This is the things it allows people to do, and all that. And I mean,
flipped it on its head a bit.
In 7, they fixed it, as in, it is not midichlorians. It is an energy that bounds and surrounds things.
I like that we had some cool showcasing powers in 7 with the holding of the blaster bolt in midair and the freezing of people. And I don't think we really got that in this one. We had the Empire Strikes Back telecommunication thing, and to me, I felt that was overused in this one a little too much.
I think it was in fact, that was probably one of my favorite parts, is the fact that not only can the Force like surround and bind things, but connect things in a way, like as in
it's FaceTime.
To me, it's a bit more than that, because to me it actually is an interesting thing, the idea that you can have presence but not be somewhere,
right?
And that ultimately, to me, this film definitely explores the more mystical side of the Force, as in terms of what it allows people to do, and kind of expands on it in an interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the part where she got spaced, and I mean it, like, I don't really want to get into that
with the mirrors.
The mirrors was awesome, and
that Harry Potter stuff going on there.
Actually, I got like Empire vibes from it, as in
when she first went in,
I got the vibes that this is a character discovery moment, and I mean, oh boy, when that
Kylo's
shadow was coming, I was waiting for Palpatine to show up.
It looked Snokish. Yeah, I was too. I was like, she's clearly.
I was like, oh boy, here we go. The dark shadow, a dark figure who's about her height. It's going to be Palpatine, but then turned out
we're on the same page on that. Like, I thought she was Rey Palpatine.
I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the. But
I love that guy. He's hilarious.
But the one thing that they did interesting with that whole sequence is, I don't know, whenever, like, again, kind of harkening back to Empire, when a character is put into a moment like this, like where they're like facing their demons, the thing they are really afraid of, they're afraid of who they're going to be or who they turn out to be. And I think there's going to be much speculation, I suspect, over that sequence, but I definitely think it was hinting at the fact that
she's a clone.
That was the one thing I was worried about. I was like, oh my god, please don't do this, because I heard that theory years ago. She's a clone of Palpatine. I'm like, oh god, please no.
The overt imagery of that was very apparent.
But then I think for me the moment was when she wiped the slate. It projected her image, and I think ultimately what it goes down, like, at least for me, what that scene was trying to highlight is, it is not your lineage, it is who you are. Like, who are you going to define yourself as?
See, I just watched Batman Begins like 2 days ago, and that's fucking sticking in my head. Rachel.
Yeah, I think overall, though, I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I like it. I think
technically it was beautiful, aesthetically beautiful, probably the best looking one I've seen.
And I mean, you actually look into why he picked that Crete, that planet, especially the aesthetic for it. You look at why he picked it, and is so clever. I don't want to spoil it, but it is so clever to think of that one.
Okay, ruined the film.
He basically said that because he couldn't, when someone got hit with a blaster, he couldn't show blood. So instead, he had the red salt come out to represent blood.
That's actually really smart.
It's a visual metaphor for blood.
Mm-hmm. That's actually great.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm actually impressed with that. That's very, very tricky. Like,
very subtle as well. And I mean, also the nice thing you get with it is this very unique aesthetic that I've never seen that really in many films. Like,
I've never ever seen that.
I always see the absurd or like the wacky, but never like this invert where it's just like, oh, also that happens to be a real place as well, which is even crazier.
Where there's red
so it's like
salt underneath?
It's a salt flat somewhere in South America, I think, where you actually wipe the surface and it's red. And I thought that was I was like, oh, that's wait, they had an actual location for that. Yeah. So the thing is with, we've been over the 3 arcs, but in terms of locations, I thought it was interesting, but I would have loved See, the problem is the casino was like
Ultimately, it could have been cut out.
It could have been either they should have gone for it, or they should have cut it out, because it is in there for such a short amount of time. It actually pulls you out of the whole thing, because other than that,
and cut it at the end. Just don't include that shot of that kid ever again. Do not include it. Rian Johnson's connection to his other trilogy can fuck off.
I don't think that's where he's gonna go, but
I honestly do, but I don't know.
The one thing I do know for sure is that, I mean, in terms, like, the casino thing pulls you out.
It does,
I think, because otherwise you have two very clearly established settings, and in the third act you have a setting which was set up
wholly new. Yeah.
So I mean, you have like you have them escaping a planet, fine. You have them on a starship, fine. They're stuck on a starship, fine, because then you're cutting between the First Order and the Resistance, and then you have Octo, which is the planet's raison. So like you've already got three settings there, right? But then all of a sudden you throw in this casino, and then you're juggling four settings at once,
right?
And I think that's why it kind of throws the momentum of the film, because like
Monte Carlo in space,
because you've got the spaceship setting which was set up, and you've got the Octo setting which was already set up. So already you like these settings were moving together.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Did you think Lando was going to be in the casino too?
No, I didn't.
Really? No, I'm just surprised because, like, my best friend and me were looking at each other and we're like, that's going to be fucking Lando. It's going to be Lando.
I think if they were going to have Lando do something, they would have announced his casting or something. But that is one sad thing, is I did want to see some more Billy D. But
you're totally on the Rian Johnson tear everything down train, aren't you?
No,
you just
I actually
ruin
want to see
Star Wars for everybody.
No, I think his whole film, this whole film, it challenges the audience as much as it challenges the characters. And I think it's all about challenging, what do you really know about Star Wars? Do you really think you know everything? Is it that predictable? And I think that's what this whole film was about, was completely throwing away all those predictions.
Trying to be edgy for the sake of edginess.
I disagree with that point. I mean, I think the fact that killing off Snoke was great.
That was good. I like that.
I think like killing off Snoke was great. Wouldn't have minded if Finn died. That would have actually worked out for me as well.
That could have,
if he did die.
I could have seen that.
Because that would have been totally consistent with this idea of we're really not being predictable.
Something to put them on the run, like The Dark Knight, where you want to see the next movie. I right now don't want to see the next movie. Like, I'll see it.
Oh wow, okay, that's really.
But my hype for it is definitely a few levels down from where it should be.
See, mine. I don't. The way I feel about it is like, I am just intrigued with how JJ is gonna tie everything together.
Clean up the mess, yeah.
Because he is. I mean, you and I will agree to disagree there, but I mean, fundamentally, yeah. I mean,
okay. You knew from the beginning, like 2 years ago, we were talking about this, and I'm like, I'm not a Rian Johnson fan.
I had faith in the guy.
I was like, you trust this guy with Star Wars? This is what you get.
When I went in to this film,
I was excited for it too.
I'm like, let's not retread Empire. Give me something different.
It did and it didn't.
And let's don't retread familiar ground. Like, give me something different and kind of take me somewhere different and interesting. And this film did that for me.
Well, certainly
in a lot of ways I didn't expect. In a lot of ways I did not expect. But I think at the same time, if the theme with this film is let's look forward and let's, like, I mean, even Luke kind of says, and again, it's like, again, one of those pieces of dialogue which is on the nose.
Yeah.
But he's like, why do you expect me to go out there with my laser sword and attack the First Order, like, by myself? And I think that's kind of like a meta commentary on, like, the way we see Star Wars, as in, like, we assume because we've read the books, we've played the games, we've looked at the history, because we've watched all the films, we assume we know everything there is to know about Star Wars. And
because there's 30 years of beautiful history that runs congruent with your
that
character.
he used.
And now he doesn't want to do it because he's being a little bitch. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me, McDoogleh, on this epic debate of Star Wars The Last Jedi. I hope you guys found this enjoyable and informative. If you want to catch McDoogleh, his link
Just
will be in
follow
the
me on
description.
Twitter. But I mean, you guys can look forward to, well, you know, there's going to be a round 2 and a round 3, and I mean, you know,
This could go on for... I think you and I are destined to do this forever.
yeah, opposite force. Wait, what did he see in the film? Oh man, I messed up the best quote.
You know what? We're gonna change. You Ryan Johnson that quote.
I think. Oh, I don't even know. What was it? Unstoppable force. Oh, there we go. Unstoppable force, immovable
You
object.
can't Ryan Johnson the mess you've made.
Hey, you know what? That's what JJ is gonna have to do, and I think JJ is definitely gonna give people what they want in 9. I
He already has so far.